Hello and welcome to the Kim Iversen Show. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you enjoyed your 4th of July holiday. But we are back now. So there's been a lot of talk about possible nuclear escalation in the war in Ukraine. The attention has been focused on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant located in the southeastern part of the country that is currently under Russian control. Both Ukraine and Russia are claiming the other is going to launch an attack on the nuclear plant in a false flag attempt. They claim the attack would happen during the evening of July 5th. And since it's about 4 o'clock in the morning there now, and so far nothing has happened, let's hope nothing does. But let's look at the plant, what each side is claiming, what the motives would be for each side to plan a false flag attempt, and the implications of it all. So let's start off with what the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is all about. The Zaporizhzhia, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong throughout the whole thing, you'll just have to forgive me, but the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. It is located in southeastern Ukraine. It's currently under Russian control. It's been under Russian control since almost the beginning of the invasion in February of 2022. Let's show a map of where this power plant is located. So Russians have controlled the power plant for a long time. And if you remember at the very beginning of the war, this made big headlines that they'd taken over this power plant. And people were saying, oh, what are they going to do? You know, this was all over CNN for a while. They spent a day entirely talking about Russia's got this power plant. They're going to blow it up. It's going to be a nuclear catastrophe. There's going to be a total meltdown. That didn't happen. There were a lot of independent observers that were saying, no, the Russians look like they're trying to control the power plant and keep it safe. But there was a lot of chatter about, oh, here they go, they're going to go nuclear. So this is where the Zaporizhzhia power plant is located. You can see it's in the southern eastern part of Ukraine, just a little bit north of Crimea. And the plant has 6 reactors. It generates about 25% of Ukraine's electricity. And actually, there was one of the hysterias after they captured the power plant last February. On March 4th, there was actually a fire, and everybody was kind of crazy about this fire and saying, "Oh no, this is really going to be a big thing." But they ended up extinguishing the fire without causing any sort of major damage. Now, if there were an attack, now the reason why this is such a big deal is the consequences of an attack on a nuclear power plant would be catastrophic. If the reactor core is damaged, it could lead to a meltdown, which would release large amounts of radioactive material into the environment. This could cause widespread contamination and health problems and could even lead to death. So if you get radiation exposure, you know, this is going to be horrible. The release of radioactive material into the environment could cause people high levels of radiation, which would cause cancer, birth defects, and other health problems. If this power plant were to melt down, there would be airborne contamination. These radioactive materials would be in the air. It could contaminate large areas. Obviously, you can't control the air. The wind could just blow this stuff everywhere. So this could make it difficult to breathe. It could also contaminate food and water. Of course, the water would be contaminated if there was a power plant catastrophe. The release of the radioactive material into the water would contaminate drinking water supplies and waterways, could make it difficult to get clean water, and could also contaminate fish and other marine life. The attack could also destroy it would just destroy the ability for a large chunk of people to get electricity and what they get from this nuclear power plant. It supplies 25% of Ukraine's electricity. So this would make it difficult in numerous ways. So the last thing you want is a nuclear power plant catastrophe of some kind. It would be devastating, and an attack on this would be massive. This would be a much greater, more severe, serious attack than like the attack on the Nord Stream pipeline. That was definitely an attack on Russia's ability to make money, on Germany's ability to get the gas that they need. That is also catastrophic. You know, it would be more catastrophic if they didn't have suddenly Norway saying, oh, well, we got a pipeline. We're just going to switch it on today, the day that the other one gets blown up. In a nuclear catastrophe like this, you know, the contamination, the cancer, the water, the air, the soil, everything being contaminated, it's truly would be very catastrophic. So this kind of leads us to what the two sides are saying right now. We're going to start with what Ukraine is saying. So because both sides are pointing the finger at each other, saying they're going to stage a false flag attack and they're going to take out this nuclear power plant. It's going to be disastrous. This is an act of major war. Ukraine's Zelenskyy came out. He made this statement. This is part of what he says. Let's go ahead and play that video.
Зараз від нашої розвідки ми маємо інформацію про те, що на даху кількох енергоблоків Запорізької атомної станції російські військові розмістили предмети, схожі на вибухівку. Можливо, щоб імітувати удар по станції, можливо, у них якісь інші сценарії, але в будь-якому випадку світ бачить і не може не бачити, що єдиним джерелом небезпеки для Запорізької атомної станції є саме Росія. І ніхто інший. На жаль, не було вчасної і масштабної реакції на теракт проти Каховської гідроелектростанції. Це може надихати Кремль на нове зло. Зупинити його – це обов'язок усіх в світі. І ніхто не може залишитись осторонь. Бо радіація нікого не залишає осторонь. Я дякую пану президенту Макрону за увагу до ситуації на ЗАЕС. І за готовність робити все необхідне, щоб гарантувати безпеку.
Okay, so essentially Volodymyr Zelenskyy is accusing Russia of planning a dangerous provocation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is under Russian control. He says that Russian forces have placed objects resembling explosives on the roof of several of the power units at the plant. So that's what he's claiming that they're doing. They stuck these explosives on the roof and they're going to blow the sucker up. Now, Russia is saying, no, that's not true. In fact, we think you guys are doing it. They've denied this. This is a statement that they made through their state media. So Ukraine may attack the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant with bombs stuffed with radioactive waste on July 5th. So they said Ukraine will try to attack the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in the coming night by dropping bombs loaded with radioactive waste removed from the South Ukraine NPP on July 3rd. They're saying in the nighttime on July 5th, which we're in the middle of that nighttime right now. Like I said, it's just like 4:07 in the morning or whatever over there. So they said in the nighttime of July 5th, Ukrainian troops will try to attack the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant with the use of high-precision long-range weapons and kamikaze drones. Said that they plan to airdrop bombs stuffed with radioactive waste that were removed from the South Ukraine nuclear power plant to a military airfield in Ukraine. The standby bombing plan provides for the use of a Tochka-U high-precision rocket with the warhead stuffed with radioactive waste. If this madness doesn't stop, there will be a big catastrophe, he says. So he said earlier that on Tuesday night, Ukraine disrupted power supplies to the plant, and they said that the power was restored, though, by 2 p.m., and the facility is operating routinely. Now, independent watchdog groups say that they haven't seen any evidence of any bombs being put onto the roof of this power plant. They're asking for access to the roof of the power plant, but they say that they haven't seen any evidence of anything like this. So what you've got is Ukraine saying Russia's going to blow the sucker up. They're putting bombs on the roof. Russia's denying these allegations, and in turn, they're accusing Ukraine of planning to attack the plant with missiles or drones packed with radioactive waste from nuclear facilities. So let's talk about the motives, because that will help us determine who done it, right? Like who's really, I mean, luckily nobody's done anything as of right now. I mean, the night is still young, I suppose. If they're claiming that it's the night of July 5th, it's the early morning hours of July 6th now. Over there, 4 in the morning. So, maybe 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, I suppose. Maybe something could still happen. But then after that, hopefully this has passed, and they'll probably move on tomorrow with pointing the finger at each other and claiming another day that they're going to be doing this. So we're going to keep watching this story unfold because it's certainly a big one. But let's talk about the motives. Now, the big motive is Ukraine is claiming, so you have to ask, okay, why would Ukraine? So Ukraine was the first one to come out and to say, Russia's going to blow this nuclear power plant. Again, a nuclear power plant that has been in their control since February of 2022, over a year, almost a year and a half now, it's been under their control. So why now would Russia want to attack and blow up this plant? What would be their motive? Well, Ukraine claims because we're doing so darn well in the counteroffensive that these guys are going to want to stop us from advancing. So let's just, okay, so if that sounds fair enough on its surface, if you're doing great, you're about ready to grab a lot more of the land back from Russia, they might feel desperate. They may want to stop you. And so maybe they would go to these really extreme lengths in order to stop you, right? So let's look, though, at the map of how the counteroffensive is going. And this is from the pro-Ukraine ISW, the Institute for the Study of War. Do you see that arrow right there in the middle of where all this red is? See that little blue bump right there? Anywhere where it's blue like that, that is the Ukraine counteroffensive. And you can see there's some other little blue areas. You know, if you go up along the red line, you'll see tiny little areas of blue. If you go down to the southern part, I think my logo is blocking it a bit, but you could see a little tiny bit of blue down there. That big bulge of blue, if you want to call it a big bulge of blue, but that's like the largest area that they've got of the counteroffensive going. So that is not, this does not look like a giant counteroffensive that is going really well. I mean, it certainly doesn't look like a counteroffensive that is going so strong and swift and hard at the Russians. And this has been going on for several weeks now. This doesn't look like something that is so threatening that Russia would feel like they need to blow up a nuclear power plant. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not there on the battlefield. I don't know if there's something extra special in that spot. But from all accounts, even the pro-Ukraine accounts, the counteroffensive is not going as well as everybody had hoped. So it's not likely that that's the reason why Russia would blow this power plant up if Russia was the one actually trying to blow the power plant up, right? So I'm trying to think if there's any other real true motive for Russia to need to go to that extent. But it seems pretty slim. Now let's talk about the Ukrainian motivations, because it turns out there's a significant reason for Ukraine to want to blow up this nuclear power plant. Let's start off with what happened June 22nd. So June 22nd, you've got Lindsey Graham. You got to love Lindsey Graham. Warmonger Lindsey Graham. You can always rely on him. And Richard Blumenthal. So here's a Democrat, Richard Blumenthal, and Lindsey Graham. So these are two lovely warmongers on each side of the aisle. They get together and they basically say, if you dare, Russia, blow up any nuclear power plants, that means war with NATO. Let's watch this.
We're introducing a resolution today, since the Senate resolution, that says that if Russia or Belarus, or a proxy of Russia, explodes a nuclear device inside of Ukraine to stop the counteroffensive or to try to break the will of the Ukrainian people, such an attack should be considered an attack on NATO itself. We're of the belief that a nuclear weapon unleashed in Ukraine would irradiate large portions of Europe where we have NATO allies. And why are we doing this? President Biden says threat of Putin using tactical nuclear weapons is real. That's like the 20th story down. So with a sense of urgency, we're urging our colleagues here to get serious about what could happen in Ukraine. Moving the tactical nuclear weapons out of Russia to Belarus was unnerving and I think very provocative. The counteroffensive is moving slowly but steadily. They're looking for a break. They will commit the forces that have been trained by the West, 6 or 8 regiments, thousands of well-trained, well-equipped forces will be put into the battle when they can exploit an opportunity. So the Ukrainians are patient. Russia has fortified their defensive positions. They've mined the whole country. They've been committing war crimes on steroids, very abusive war being waged by Putin. But we're here to talk about something nobody else seems to want to talk about. I applaud President Biden for putting on the table that the threat of Putin using a nuclear weapon in Ukraine is real. And our message is to those around Putin that if you do this, if you follow his order, if he ever gives it, you can expect a massive response from NATO, and you will be at war with NATO.
Okay, so on June 22nd, this is what he says. And it says that if you unleash a nuclear weapon on Ukraine, you're going to be at war. So they released this joint press release on that same day. It was from Lindsey Graham press release. Graham, Blumenthal introduced resolution to address threat of Russian tactical nukes. And in the second paragraph there, it says, Graham and Blumenthal noted their resolution holds that any use of a tactical nuclear weapon by Russia, Belarus, or their proxies, or the destruction of a nuclear facility that disperses radioactive contaminants into NATO territory would be viewed as an attack on NATO itself, requiring an Article 5 response, okay? So if you blow up a nuclear facility, and of course the air that blows takes these contaminants all over the place, and we find that the air has blown into a place like Poland or anywhere else, you are at war with NATO. That's a very easy way to get NATO into a war if you're Ukraine, right? I mean, if you're Volodymyr Zelenskyy, you're hearing this, you're like, wait a minute, what? What did you just say? So you said that if Russia attacks a nuclear power plant, then if they blow that up, then they're going to be at war with NATO. We want nothing more. So we know that Zelenskyy has been wanting to get NATO into the war, not just funding the war, but actually boots on the ground into the war. They are losing troops. They're losing steam. As you see, their counteroffensive is not going very well. So it is in their interest to blow up a nuclear power plant. Maybe even the Zaporizhzhia one is just one that they're using as a distraction. It could be another one somewhere else in the country that they're going to claim that the Russians blow up. But if they can really truly pin it on the Russians, which they've been pretty successful at, as we saw with like the pipeline, right? The Nord Stream pipeline. How many people were gullible enough to believe that Russia would destroy its own pipeline that was providing them billions of dollars? They had no reason to attack their own pipeline, yet so many gobbled that up and believed that story. So it wouldn't be very difficult, actually, for Ukraine to say Russia did it and for the world to say, of course, Russia did it, because they wouldn't want to say, no, you did it. They're going to say, well, Russia did it because Russia's the bad guy. Ukraine cannot do any wrong. That is what's in the minds of so many of these people. So this call that, Graham and Blumenthal, this resolution that they put out there on June 22nd was just music to Zelensky's ears. It's music to Ukraine's ears. So that's a really good motivation for the Russians to be more right on this one and say, actually, Ukraine is planning this attack on a nuclear plant. Like, we've got the evidence that they're trying this thing and they're going to do it. Because, of course, for one, Russia would not want, there's no motivation at all for Russia to want to trigger an Article 5. They don't want to go to war with all of NATO. They've been wanting this thing to be to get in there and swiftly take it over, just deal with it and get in and get out. And this whole thing has taken longer than they anticipated, maybe because they've changed their ideas on what they want, or maybe it's just the Ukrainians are doing a lot. They didn't expect maybe NATO to jump in and give a bunch of training and arms and money to Ukraine. So maybe there was some miscalculation there, which is why it's taking them longer than they expected. But they certainly don't want to go to war with actual NATO troops. So there's no real motivation, interestingly, for Russia to attack the power plant. There's way more motivation for Ukraine to attack it in order to trigger that Article 5 that Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal, again, a Democrat and a Republican, getting together and saying, if you do this, it's war. And we all know that Washington absolutely loves war. So this has been, there's also been some other reports coming out of Ukraine that they've been starting to plan, they've been doing some drills on how to survive an attack on a nuclear plant. I suppose when you're in wartime, you could go down the road of, they're doing these drills. They started these drills after June 22nd, by the way. So of course it's easy to deduce that if they start doing these drills after June 22nd, after Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal come out and say it will trigger Article 5, you could deduce that, well, they started this because they're thinking, okay, great, then we're going to attack one. So now we need to teach the population how to survive a nuclear catastrophe. Or it could be that, in a time of war, anything could happen and you want to train your population for anything that could potentially happen. It's less likely that that's what they're doing. Otherwise, they would have done this back in February, March. They would have started those types of trainings when Russia took over the Zaporizhzhia. I know I'm just slaughtering the name of this. I'm sorry, guys. But once Russia took that over, you think that they would have been starting those drills and those exercises around that point, but instead they start right after these warmongers in Washington say, hey, this is going to trigger Article 5 and NATO's kind of come marching in. So still, as of right now, I just want to double check. Let me just do a quick Google search to make sure that nothing has blown in the time that I've been talking to you guys. But it doesn't look like it. It looks like we're still in the clear. Yeah, there's just still saying they accuse each other of plotting attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, but there is nothing there's been no attack. So there's no attack at this point. Okay. Let me tell you about our sponsor, Birch Gold. Maybe you're feeling a little worried about your retirement account. You're worried about the economy. You're worried about where are we going, with like foreign policy. Is the world going to blow up in nuclear warfare? So you might be a little bit nervous about the value of the dollar, about your retirement accounts. And that is where gold comes in, because you can really hedge your bets with gold. It is a very stable currency that just withstands this geopolitical turmoil. It withstands inflation and all devaluing of currencies. It is a very stable investment. And so you can get yourself started by contacting Birch Gold. Just go to birchgold.com/Kim for your free info kit. And a specialist will walk you through what you can do to get yourself started in investing in gold. You can convert your existing 401k or IRA into an IRA in precious metals, into gold. You could do this. It's an tax-sheltered account. It won't cost you a penny. You could maybe get yourself maybe you want physical gold that you keep in your own home safe. Whatever you want to do, there's a lot of different ways that you could get yourself started, invested into gold. And the experts at Birch Gold can really help you with that. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of satisfied customers. Just visit birchgold.com/Kim and get that free info kit.